So firstly, Paschal Michvel Achsania, big shakach to Gdali, the Romanovs, for hosting the Chabur this evening. Tonight, of course, is Asar B'Teves. Asar B'Teves, aside from being Tzom, is also a very important Yahrzeit. Yahrzeit that is becoming more and more important as time goes on, because many, many, many more people are engaging in his Torah and learning his Torah, and that is the Yahrzeit of Reb Nosson. Reb Nosson, the primary Talmud of Reb Nachman of Breslov. Reb Nosson's Yahrzeit is tonight. Reb Nosson, particularly apropos for our conversation, is that Reb Nosson, more than anything else, was a Talmud. Paradigmatically a Talmud. To the extent that all of the Hasidim of Reb Nachman thought that Reb Nosson would be the Rebbe. After Reb Nachman was niftar, Reb Nosson said, no, I'm his Talmud. I'm not there. And he kept on teaching Reb Nachman's Torah, and he kept on printing Reb Nachman's Torah, and he kept on writing and was mechadish in Reb Nachman's Torah, but he said, Reb Nachman's the Rebbe. Reb Nachman's the Rebbe. Ad kedikach that the Chassidim said that Reb Nosson was niftar on an Erev Shabbos, was Asar B'Teves that year. And one of the other Talmidim, the only other Talmud that was Mekusha to Reb Nachman in some way like Reb Nosson was, although differently, was Talmud of Reb Naftali. And because it was an Erev Shabbos, he was niftar just before Shabbos. He was writing Kimat until his last moments. Like his last moments, he was writing Chidushim Reb Nachman, which is the Likutei Halachos, which he was writing until Kimat the moment that he died. He left this world just before Shabbos, so they couldn't get the news out to the Hasidim that Reb Nosson had died. And that night, Reb Naftali saw Reb Nosson in his dream, and he said to him, what's going on? And he saw him running. In his dream. He was just running and running and running and running. He said, Reb Nosson, where are you running? He says, I'm running to Rabbeinu. I'm running. Now that I've left this place, I'm going to that place. I'm going to see Reb Nachman. His whole life was to be a Talmud. That was his whole mahus, was to be a Talmud, which is something that certainly within the conversation of education we forget about. Is the avoda is to learn how to be a Talmud. And what I'd like to do for a couple of minutes is, rather than framing the conversation as one of the appropriate cost and price of Jewish education and how to adequately come up with a rubric to price out Jewish education, which is difficult and important, I think it's important to discuss what the point of Jewish education is, which sounds like a weird thing to say. Like, I'm a rabbi. Shouldn't that be obvious? But I think that the conversation that we're having is indicative of the fact that it is not obvious. Meaning, there's a lot of things that cost a lot of money. And the question is, what deserves money? Meaning, where does the money go? And what should we be spending that money on in terms of Jewish education? Now, there's a lot of different things that you can spend money on in Jewish education. And some of them are probably legitimate expenses. And some of them are probably not legitimate expenses. And the question is how to navigate that, and then how to advocate about that, and how to deal with that, and how to make decisions about that. And there might be parts of this conversation which are not easy pills to swallow. But before we can get to any of that, we'll learn a little bit inside of Reb Nosson and Likutei Halachos, and we'll learn a little bit inside of Reb Nachman and Likutei Moharan. Because before we can really get to anything, it's worth understanding what we're trying to do. Like, what's the point of this whole thing? Like, what is the point of the enterprise of Torah education? Just putting it out there, as modern Orthodox Jews, or modern comma Orthodox Jews, like Reb Nachman always says, I'm modern comma Orthodox. There's nothing modern about my orthodoxy. I'm a modern person. My orthodoxy is glatt. It's old school orthodoxy. There's a comedian that had this word a little while back that he asked his parents what they are denominationally. So he said, I forgot who this was. He said, my parents told me We are modern Orthodox. I didn't know what modern meant, but I learned a couple of years later that modern meant not very. Right? That's not us. That's not the version of modern Orthodox that we subscribe to. But we believe in the value of secular education. Right, we spoke a little bit on Shabbos. Is there such a thing as secular education? Which is interesting, meaning maybe everything is part of Torah. But to do that, you send your kids to public school. Nothing wrong with that, right? So why do you send them to Jewish day school, Bichlal? If you send to public school, you wouldn't have to have any of these conversations. So why do you send to a Jewish day school? Like, what's the point of it? There's something that you can't get out of a public school, and that is Torah. So the question is that thing which is Torah, are we doing this right? And what's the point of it? And what's the goal? What is the goal? And I'll say just al regel achas, because this is important to understand, that within the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, there are at least two different goals of Talmud Torah. What are the two goals of Talmud Torah?
One would be passing over the tradition and our heritage, basically.
So that would be in chinuch, but in Talmud Torah itself, what's the point of learning Torah?
To master it.
To what end?
Lassos.
So there is Torah which is learned, limit al manas lassos, meaning you can't be a practicing Jew if you don't know anything. There's education which is, the limud is a requirement in order to be able to do mitzvahs. If you don't have the limud, then you cannot do the mitzvahs. You need limud. You need. If you don't know Hilchos Kashrus, you can't keep kosher. If you don't know Hilchos Shabbos, you can't keep Shabbos. If you don't know Hilchos Tzitzis, you can't put on tzitzis. If you don't know Hilchos Tefillah, and if you don't know how to daven, you can't daven. So there's an education which is prerequisite to being able to be a Jew.
Like for the second generation, because it seems like the first generation could do it, just go through the motions. They could be taught it without a real education, but that generation would never be able to pass it.
Correct.
It would
for sure. Meaning there's a
be self-sustaining if you don't have people learning it.
Right. Meaning you need to know what to do. Limud al manas lassos is in the language of Chazal. There's another goal of limud Torah which is different from the pragmatic Talmud Torah, which is the value of Talmud Torah in and of itself. Meaning that there is an avoda of Talmud Torah which is valuable even if you know all of the halachas. Meaning even if you know Kol HaTorah Kula, there's a value in limud Torah. Which there's a long arichas to speak about here, and we're not going to get to that because when we talk about chinuch, we're not yet talking about the value of Talmud Torah.
Right, that's like the kollel side.
Right.
Yeah.
Meaning we're not talking about that for like elementary school or middle school, or Soloveitchik used to refer to himself as a Melamed Dardki. Meaning he would say in YU that he's Melamed Dardki is teaching kids. What does it mean to teach kids? People that are not Baki in Kol HaTorah Kula. If you're not yet Baki in Kol HaTorah, Soloveitchik had a high standard for what it means to have accomplished the mitzvah of knowing Torah, of Yediyas Torah, such that your limud is only limud and not for the sake of Yediyah. And for that, you have to be baki in everything. You have to know everything, and then your limud is. So we are all still dariki. We're still children.
Falls under
Yeah.
Which is you need to transmit that knowledge. Also.
100%. Well, we're going to get to that. But what does it say in Shulchan Aruch? And this is the gadlus of Reb Nosson. Reb Nosson sat with the Shulchan Aruch, and he explained the pnimius of the dinim in Shulchan Aruch according to the Zohar and according to the Arizal and according to Rabbi Nachman, meaning what's inside of the Shulchan Aruch. He took the world of Nigla and the world of Nistar and put it together in the same book. That's the Sefer Likutei Halachos. Says Rabbi Nosson as follows. He quotes the din in Shulchan Aruch here. There, Simon Reish Mem Hey Sif Gimel says the Shulchan Aruch. Kishem shemitzvah lelamen as benai, the same way that there is a mitzvah to teach your child, to teach your son. Kach mitzvah lelamen as ben benai, so too there is a mitzvah to teach your grandson. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, pasuk in the Dvarim, v'datem levanecha v'livnei banecha. You have to inform your son and your grandson. Interesting. There is a mitzvah both to teach your son and your grandson. That's the halacha that we're going to be forbearing on for a couple of minutes. V'loy leben benai bilvad, not just your grandson. Ela mitzvah al kol chacham l'lam l'talmidim. There's a mitzvah for a chacham to teach, for any chacham to teach as many talmidim as possible. Meaning that the onus is on somebody that knows to teach. Ela shemitzvah lahakdim benai leben benai uven benai leben chavera. Ad kan lashon Shulchan Aruch. But says the Shulchan Aruch, there is an order of preferential treatment, meaning a Rebbe has to first and foremost teach his son and then his grandson, and then worry about his neighbor's kids, his friends' kids. Meaning, the order goes your son, then your grandson, and then everybody else. That's the order. And then Reb Nassan says as follows: "He says, Inyan ben uven haben al pi ma shekas Rabbeinu Zal harin kaparas mishkavai." He says this is in accordance with what Rabbi Nachman wrote, and this was after Rabbi Nachman was niftar. That's why he says harin kaparas mishkavai. This is in Likudei Halachos Hilchos Melamdim Halacha Beis. So this was written after Rabbi Nachman was niftar. In the Torah, he mikates ki merachamam a game which is in Likutei Tinyan and Siman Zayin, which we're going to take a look at in a minute. V'akla, the rule is as follows. This is what we're going to focus on. It says ki ha'aris haben hu bechinas aye, bechinas hasagas darei mala, v'aris hatalmud bechinas melochal aretz kavode, bechinas hasagas darei mata. That's what we're going to figure out now. So I'm not even going to explain that yet. We're going to discuss. Says Rabbi Nachman as follows. It's a long Torah. We're not going to go through all of this Torah, but Chaim, Rabbi Nachman deals with the question of what is the purpose, what is the goal of Jewish education? What's the purpose of the mitzvah of teaching children? Teaching Torah to the next generation. What's the purpose of it? Bigadol. So obviously there's the obvious purpose of ensuring that there is continuity of Yiddishkeit. But then there is a broader question, which is, why do you want to have continuity of Yiddishkeit? Why is that important? And that's something that it's a shtickle, off color to ask. Like, what do you mean? Obviously, we want a continuation of Yiddishkeit. The question is why? Why should there be Jews? The Jewish education is there to ensure the continuity of Jews. So why should there be Jews? Why should this be something that I am interested in and something that I'm invested in? Something that I'm having a debate about, how to best use my funding to ensure that this continuity happens. That's Rabbi Nachman's question. He was not afraid to ask difficult questions, and potentially to deal with some challenging answers. The first thing that he points out here, and this is the Hagdama to it, and this, just to say outside for a second, is the relationship that a parent has with a child. We talk about in Yom Kippur, which is different from the relationship that a person has with an employee. On Rosh Hashanah, we relate to Hashem in one of two ways. We say, Im kebanim, im kavadim. Im kebanim, if we are to you like children, rachmeinu kerachem aval banim. He said rachmanis on us like a father has rachmanis, has rachamim on his son. V'im kavadim, and if we are avadim, then we just look to you that you should have chanina. You should be compassionate to us. What's the difference between the request for rachamim and the request for compassion? So regel achas, it's important to understand what rachamim is. What's rachamim?
Mercy.
Mercy. What's mercy? Or let me ask differently. How is mercy different from kindness?
Kindness is not something that you may need. You may need kindness to survive.
You might need mercy to survive too.
Mercy makes it go away. Like it rips up. You can almost like make it disappear. Kindness is like more of a, it happened, but I'm forgiving for it. But still,
You see somebody on the side of the road.
I think someone who needs mercy is someone who understands that what he's doing may not be right, but he's asking for mercy. But someone who's asking for flat out kindness, this is the situation I'm in. I didn't have a choice. Just help me out.
So when we say
No
that,
strings attached.
when we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has mercy on us, He doesn't have kindness.
Kindness follows the mercy.
So
Come from
say
a
kindness.
level of
Which one's better?
sympathy as well.
What?
Does it come from a level of like sympathetic? Like mercy is you, like you're saying, you need to help someone in their time of need.
So mercy is rational.
You're appealing to someone's compassion.
But that's chanina. That's different. It's different
Love.
words. What?
You have to love someone.
Love is midas chesed. It's ava. In Kabbalah, we would say that Rachamim comes from Midas HaTiferes. Right? Rachamim comes from Tiferes. Love comes from Chesed. Gvura is Din. Tiferes is Rachamim.
Rachamim is an alternative to the system of Din. We often ask for Hashem to judge us based on a system of Rachamim because we know that we're not going to be worthy if we were judged by the system of Din.
So
that's the contrast. It's Rachamim to Din, but kindness is not so much in the system of judgment, but it's a midah, kind of a meta midah.
So
Not sure what the nafkamina is in that respect, but I the way I see Rachamim Din, we have different lashonos of Hashem, whether it's Elokim, which is Din, or whether it's
Yud-Kevavka, which is Rachamim. Yeah.
Rachamim.
So what exactly does Rachamim mean?
Maybe
So let's-
kindness is more appealing to the human condition.
So let's try to explain this. Yeah, I'll say B'derech Mashal because it's just a to thing. Imagine you have a boy that grows up in a inner city environment. There's gang warfare and there's violence and but he's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's the oldest of 7 kids. His father's been out of the picture for years. And his mother's worked her whole life to put food on the table to make sure. And he's the oldest in his family, and he's very studious. He's a good boy. He goes to school and he works hard and he learns hard and he's trying. And the whole world around him is disastrous and a mess. And he comes home and he helps with his siblings and he helps his mother. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's the ehrliche guy. He's in 12th grade. Nebuch, his mother gets hit by a car. She's in the hospital. It's going to take her weeks to recover. And he's got his finals coming up. And he's got 6 younger siblings. And his mother cannot make money. And there's nobody in the family to help. There's nothing. And he's talking to an uncle saying, like, what can I do? How can I? And the uncle says to him, look, you're a good boy. You want to help out. We need your help with a convenience store down the road. I know you don't like doing these things, but this is the only way that I can help you get any money. This is what I need you to do. You're going to go in this time and you're going to pull a thing out of your out of your hoodie, and you're going to point it at the guy, and you're going to say, give me whatever's in the register. And you're going to take it. You're going to run. I'm going to be driving the car outside. You're going to hop in. Off you're going to go. He hates the whole idea. He says, okay. What can I do? Mother, I've got kids, younger siblings, I'm going to do it. So he does. It happens to be that night, the guy that is operating the register happened to, get lucky, and he has a baseball card, whatever, that's worth, $100,000 sitting in that register. And he takes everything that's in the register, and the cops come, and the amount of money that he stole wasn't a couple $100. Now he's put in trial for grand larceny. Because I don't know. He goes to court. He just turned 18. Midas Hadin is you're 18 years old, armed robbery, grand larceny. What happens to you?
Jail for a little.
You're gone. You're done. I mean, we'll see you if we see you. That's it. Nigmar ha'inyan. You're finished. That's Midas Hadin. There's no chesed to talk about here, because once you're sitting in the courtroom, chesed doesn't exist. Chesed is something that exists outside of the world of din. So what's rachamim? Rachamim is when you look at this guy, and you say, I understand not just him, but I understand his context. And I understand the context of his family. And I understand the context of his life. And I understand that if I do this to him, not only will this be worse for him, this will be worse for the world. Meaning Rachamim forces a broader perspective. It is the din is too narrow. If I want to have emes, I cannot operate on Midas Hadin. Because that's not reflective of the truth. The truth is that there's an aspect of him that deserves this punishment, but the emes is much bigger. Much bigger. That's called rachamim. Rachamim is when you zoom out, it doesn't make the crime go away, but it puts the crime in context. And that's the meter that a parent has for a child. Karachem aval banim. Because the reason that you don't throw your kid out of the window at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're screaming their head off is not because you feel an overwhelming sense of love for them. At that moment, you're upset. You're angry with them. Just go to sleep. Why are you kvetching? Why are you whining? Why are you making my life difficult? You do love them, but the real reason that you are still going to support them and take care of them at that moment is not because of chesed. It's not because you want to be a loving, kind person. It's because you want the thing that's in the best interests of you and him and this. That's called rachamim. So Rav Nachman gives a fascinating chiddush here, a fascinating mashal, which has a tremendous amount of application today. I recently saw a podcast. There's particularly chachmedike vart. I see if I can remember who says, but he said you can choose that you can either be friends with your children now or friends with your children later. You can't have it both ways. Meaning, if you are your child's best friend when they're a kid, then you will not be best friends with them as an adult. And Rav Nachman says exactly that word. In the world of rachamim, rachamim means the big picture. So he says, in order to be a leader, you need to have rachamim. That's the pasuk in Yeshaya Perek Mem Tes, ki merachamam yen nahagim. That the one who has rachamim, the one that is merachim, can lead. Only a person that has rachamim can lead. So you need to know how to operate with rachmanos. You cannot have rachamim on murderers and thieves. Meaning, to have rachamim on them is very bad. Because the big picture is if you empower these people, you're going to destroy society. You cannot have rachamim on people that are trying to destroy the world. That is inappropriate rachamim. It says, v'chein mishe eni yodea eich liznag im rachmanos, a person that doesn't know how to operate with rachmanos, azay yuchal rachamim al tinok shel arba yom, is going to have mercy on a child of 4 days. What's he going to do? Liten le machal atzarech legadol, he's going to give the best food that adults love. I love you so much. Let me give you, some A5 Wagyu steak. That's called homicide, right? You give a baby 4 days old, give him the best steak in the world. You just killed the baby. That's not called rachamim, that's called murder. Says, but it's not rachamim for him. You have to give him chal, you have to give him mother's milk. Meaning, if you treat him like you want to treat him later, you're going to kill him now. And likewise, if you treat him later like you should have treated him as a baby, he's going to hate you. Meaning, rachamim means to see the now for the now in the context of everything. It is to hold both perspectives simultaneously. Which means that there is a paradox within the way that we raise children. Which is a constant, perpetual focus on the now in the context of the future. At every stage, you have to say, what do they need now in the context of everything? And if you give them what they need later now, that's not called rachamim. That's called destroying them. And if you give them later what you should have given them now, that's also called destroying them. I have conversations from time to time with parents at the beginning of 9th grade. That parents say to me, my child, never really picked up like the skills for like learning Mishnahs and Gemaras. They didn't work on those things. So I tell parents that 9th grade, I think, is, and it's hard already then, but that might be the last year that you can like force a kid to pick up learning skills. like the reading, translating skills. Because by the time a kid is 15, 16, 17, and you want them to start practicing, how to read and translate the Mishnah and the Gemara, they're going to go out of their minds. It's boring, like mind-numbing. The only time that happens, if a child doesn't pick it up as a little kid, is much later, maybe in the mid-20s or even 30s, where they understand that I need to build these skills. But if you don't build those skills when you're young, it's very hard because it's very boring. So when you're young, you don't need fancy things in order to learn. Boring things are fun. Reading, translating, practicing, those things are, meaning a kid that doesn't learn arithmetic in first, second, third, fourth grade, to teach a kid that's 17 arithmetic, try teaching long division to somebody that's 17. They'll shoot you. Right? You can't do it. It is mind-numbing. But if you're little, so you can learn at every stage there's limit that is worth learning at this point in time, and there's limit that's not yet ready for that. The same way that if you sit down with a kid at the age of 7 and say to them, come, let's learn Reb Chaim al Rambam. What are you talking about? Chakiras and Svaras and Lamda. Amar Rebbe Meir. I mean that. Give me a Mishnah, Psuka, Halacha, simple, clear. Complexity is not the wheelhouse of a 7-year-old. Which means that education has to be gradated appropriately. But what's the point of all of this? Meaning, Rachamim means taking this big picture into account. What's the goal of this? And he has a whole aricha said that Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Rachman. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest Rachman that ever existed in Klal Yisrael. That's why he's Moshe Rabbeinu. And he also writes, and this is in other Torah, so he points out that the more that somebody is a katan, the more important it is to have a gadol teach them. And we get this wrong in education, Michlal, is that certainly in our communities, and it's not like this by more Haredi communities, we should just be clear about this. In our communities, if you're very matzliach as a Rebbe, then you teach like in a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. And if you're a little bit less matzliach as a Rebbe, then you teach like the top shir in a high school. And if you're a little bit less matzliach as a Rebbe, then you teach, mid-level shir in a high school. And if you're like really like a shtickle shlemiel as a Rebbe, then you teach in a middle school. And if you're like the worst Rebbe in the world, then you teach like first and second grade. And we pay you accordingly. Which means that the kids that are the most impressionable and they need the greatest level of chinuch, we pay the least of the Rebbeim and we denigrate those Rebbeim the most. In the Haredi world, it doesn't work like that. Like there are I know certain Rebbeim that have been teaching like second grade their whole life, and they own it and it's theirs, and the communities honor them for it with real covet. In the second grade Rebbe in a Haredi neighborhood, when things are done appropriately, is given real covet. And he's thought of as somebody that as a Baal Erech. He's got values and he deserves something. And it's not like he's a shlemiel that he didn't become a Rosh Yeshiva. No. He is the second grade Rebbe. And people wait for their kids to go to his shir and to learn and he builds relationships with them and he goes to the bar mitzvahs and chassan is like, the second grade Rebbe becomes like a person. Chaser lanu that, and I'll say that as a critique of our community bichlal, is that we haven't managed to do that. And that's a problem. And also say al regel achas, that it's worth noting this. When I taught middle school a number of years ago, before we moved to Boca, I was teaching middle school kids. I was teaching some 4th graders, 5th graders, and 6th graders. And I noticed that something interesting happened from around the beginning of 4th grade to the end of 6th grade. In that span of time, is that at some point in time, like around the beginning of 4th grade, kids still sing in davening, they daven out loud. And it's still like a good thing for a kid to try to impress the Mora, try to impress the Rebbe singing out loud, davening out loud. There's a cheshek to it. And at some point, by like the end of 6th grade, it's not cool anymore. And that not cool, for most people, lasts the rest of their lives. People don't daven seriously for the rest of their lives. Which means that at some point in time, between 4th grade and 6th grade, depending on the kid, the cheshek, that drive, that desire to daven well, dies, is not dealt with, is not resurrected, is not effectively educated. At that crucial moment, if there isn't somebody to catch that kid that is now maturing into, my davening is supposed to shift from like, right, to like something meaningful in a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if that doesn't occur in those critical years, you are at risk of losing this person for the rest of their lives. And it's an avla, it's a travesty that we don't adequately deal with that. Myself included. We don't adequately deal with that crucial moment when kids are like 10, 11. Because, again, the best Rabbeim are teaching in yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. Or in high schools, the top shir. But the cheshek that kids are totally missing out on here. And I think it's much worse for boys than it is girls because there are excellent moros still in the younger age groups. It's less of a pigam to be a mora for younger kids. Like it doesn't hurt your covet so much to be a mora for younger kids, but it hurts your covet to be a rebbe for younger kids. We don't pay you well, and not a Talmid Chacham, and you don't know how to learn, and that's why you're teaching it. And the boys get the raw end of the deal here. They don't end up with like a rebbe that's going to take them through and show them how to daven. And bring that davening into the cheshek, into learning, into the classroom, into the chaser mashu. Rav Nachman makes the point that the smaller somebody is, the bigger their rebbe needs to be. And Klal Yisrael were on the lowest madrega coming out of Mitzrayim. They needed the biggest rebbe in the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it. You need the biggest rebbe in the world. Imagine somebody today would be like, I don't want to be the rebbe for Klal Yisrael coming out of Mitzrayim. They're not from. Right? I don't want to be a kiruv rabbi. I want like a starke yeshiva. I want bachrim that are holding in Shas and Poskim. Then although Moshe Rabbeinu said, I will be the rebbe for these oisfer, low life, good for nothing, like Ovdei Avodah Zarah 15 minutes ago, I'll be their rebbe. And I will petition for them. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to kill all of them, Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, those are my Talmidim. You don't touch my Talmidim. Eschol Goy Gadol, Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. You don't touch my Bachrim. These ones are mine. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most protective rebbe of all time. With the worst Talmidim. By the way, that hated him and wanted to get him fired. Right? Yeah. You understand? They drove him crazy. They drove him crazy and they rebelled against him and they made his life miserable. And at the end of his life, he doesn't go into Eretz Yisrael because of them. The Rav Chaim HaKadosh points out that that's the chiddush at the beginning of Parashat V'zos HaBracha. V'zos HaBracha Hashem Barach Moshe, as Bnei Yisrael Lifnei Mosai, that there'd be all of the reasons in the world that Moshe Rabbeinu had to say, I'm done with you guys. And the last thing that he does is give them brachas. The godless of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what it means to be a rebbe. It's to look at the people that ruined your life and say, these are my bachar. These are my boys and girls. I'm not letting anybody touch them. What's the point of all of this? What is the goal of this whole thing called Jewish education? And why is it that there's a value in teaching your grandson? What is this all about? We'll skip a little bit. He says, when a person's time comes to leave this world, and the soul is going up and cleaving to the place that it's rising to. In the lofty higher worlds. That's not the point. Point is not to go to the highest places in Shemaim. That's not the goal. It's not why HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us in this world. Shetiyah neshama rak devuka lemala. That your soul should be connected up high. That's not the goal. Rak ikar hashlemus shel neshama hi. The goal of a soul that comes into this world is shebe'ishi lemala tiyeh lemata gamken. That while it is above, it is also below. What does it mean that the soul is both above and below simultaneously? Al kein netzarech sheyasher acharav bracha. To that end, it is essential that a person leaves behind them bracha, meaning ben o talmid. The goal is to leave somebody, something in this world after you. The goal is that your das should exist here even when you're not here anymore. The goal is to ensure that your das is perpetuated. Why? Like Chazal said, and we'll skip just a little bit. Here it says, Gam haben bevadei ein lemala nisha ben Rasha. If your son is a Rasha, Khalila, then you haven't gained anything. Chas v'shalom. Va'ikir lahashi ben sheyeh bechinas talmid gamken. The goal is to make a child that is also a talmid. She'yikabel mimena sichla v'data. That your son, that your child, that your children should be mekabel from your seichel and your das. That your das is left here when your soul goes up. Why? And this is the ultimate tachlis of all of chinuch. Somebody that knows a little bit about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In your life experience, in the way that you've grown up, in the way that you've engaged with the world. If you know a little bit about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you've met Hashem in this world. That there's been a place and a space where you have gained wisdom, insight, das in particular, which is practically how to engage with that which you have known and learned in a way that you can utilize it in this world. הוא יודע שעיקר התענוגים והשעשועים של השם יזברך הוא רק שאנחנו מעולם הזה השפל נגדל ונקדש שמו יזברך. Anybody that knows Hashem a little bit knows that the greatest pleasure that Hashem has in this world is that when people in this world are megadal and mekadesh His name, meaning that we engage with HaKadosh Baruch Hu here. This is all that Hashem wants in this world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has all of the lofty angels. He has everything that He has in this world. He is everything in Shemaim. Like we have the piyut that we say on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Asher Masach Be'erele Ometz. Your fear is felt with the loftiest of angels. What do you want? You want tehillah. You want praise from like low life, good for nothing, like Osfer of Jews in this world. That's what you want. You want us. Or like the Medrash Chuma says, like the Baal Tanya made the whole Arichuzan, this is called Dira B'Tachtanim. You want it to be a Dira B'Tachtanim. Then Hashem should be present in this world. Shkach L'chaim. You want Hashem to be, He wants to be present, yeah. Shem Ovdin Ozer Yisbarach. Va'af al pichein ikar atanu hashashor shalok she'ol l'malu avodah shel olam hashofel hazeh va'al ken tzrichim lahasher achrav ben atalmid k'dei she'yishar da'at lamata. The goal is that when you leave this world, that which you gain, the unique perspective that you have created, doesn't leave with you. That perspective now grows. Because you, through your life, through your experiences, have developed a unique understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you have found places and spaces that Hashem exists, that nobody before you has ever encountered. And Chalila, when a person leaves this world, that they should take that with them. That means that idea of Hashem now goes lamala, it's no longer lamata. But Hashem wants it to be that it's going to illuminate this world. That not that we're just going to start from. The goal isn't that we repeat the same level again. It's not like you die in the game and then your kid starts the same game from the beginning. The goal is that your kid picks up from where you left off. That's the point. The point is that we move the ball forward, that the world becomes more filled with Das Elokim. That's the goal of chinuch. That's the goal of all of education, is to create that. When you leave your das in this world through a ben, through a son or a talmid or a student, it is as if you are still in this world while you are there. You want to know what the point of Jewish education is? Is to fill the world with das Elokim. And that is why the goal is for you to teach your kid. That's the goal. To pass on that which you have to the next generation. You, with your unique das Elokim. That which you have achieved, that which you have understood, that which you have created. Which is why the Ikar mitzvah is to teach your son. And not just that, but to teach your grandson. Because that is to continue to perpetuate that. And once, and this is the din in Shulchan Aruch, that the mitzvah of teaching your son comes first, and then the mitzvah of your grandson comes before teaching everybody else. But to create Talmidim is also, because the point is to create Das Elokim. Whatever Das you have to expand. Now, some of us have big deos, and some of us have small deos. But everybody has Das Elokim. Everybody has found HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their life, in their own way. And that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to pass that on. Now, my dear sweet and holy friends, Letzari Harav, I do not know any school that has in its mission statement, what is the goal of our school? To perpetuate Das Elokim, to be memale kol haaretz das es Hashem, k'mayim leyam echad. But that's the goal. The goal is to perpetuate Das Elokim. And your goal as a father is to perpetuate your Das Elokim. That the world should be filled, and that your son should pick up where you got to and continue from that. Be mamshech from that place to create more from that space. Not just to start the level over and over and over and over again. And this is a radically different way of thinking about Jewish education. Because again, the goal isn't to make sure that we have from Jews. It's not to perpetuate the Jewish people. That's not the goal of chinuch. The goal of chinuch is that your unique perspective continues to the next generation. Now, what happens? What happens if you don't have the kelim to pass that on? So first and foremost, this is the din in Shulchan Aruch, that if you don't have the ability to do this, then you have to pay somebody to do it. That doesn't absolve you from the obligation of teaching your son. It just means that you have a shliach that is assisting in that. But remember, that shliach is going to pass on their das to your son, which is also good, because we're still moving the ball forward. But chas v'shalom, that your das elokim doesn't get passed on. Chas v'shalom, that you leave this world, you are lamala and you're not lamata. Then what happened to your contribution to this world? Is your contribution stam genetics? Chalila. Your contribution should be in das elokim. Rabbi Nachman has a whole Torah where he discusses that if a person isn't able to pass on themselves the ikar of their das, they can do so through a levush, meaning through their externalities, which is by paying for it. That's the other derech of doing it, which is how we all fulfill this mitzvah. But it's important to understand that might move the ball forward, but it doesn't move your ball forward. It doesn't move your das elokim, that which you have accomplished, forward. What if you find yourself in a situation where, in order to be able to move the ball forward, and this is the next piece of the conversation, you need money to do so. And let's say that we have calculated all of the necessities in order to do this in the best way, which would mean to hire the best Rebbeim, to train them appropriately, to have all of the best circumstances available to ensure that the Asar Elokim is passed on to the next generation. And you yourself don't have enough money. You don't have enough money to do so. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with not having enough money to do so?
You sell the shirt off your back.
No.
No?
No.
You ask the state to pay $1,000.
Right? You petition the state. Yeah. By the way, sort of.
Fundraise.
Who fundraises?
Gila.
No. No. Again, your goal is to pass on your das to your kid. How do you do so?
And your family has no money.
She says, "Va'al yidei klolius ben Talmud," through this klolius of creating a ben that's also a Talmud. If you want to do this, al yidei zeh, mishu ish chaya, somebody that is strong, somebody that's steadfast. Ve'ena hefech, and isn't the opposite of this. And then he says, "Shekarin roi mazel or shlemazel." If you're not a shlemazel, right? If you're not a shlemazel, right? How do you do this? So there's an arichas here which we're not going to get into, but he says, "Uyochel lekabel be'isa achila he'aras haratzon." You can, through eating, you can gain this ratzon, which, again, this if we're bringing for another time, how through eating you can do this, but to take the desire that you have for food and connect it to the desire that Hashem has for you to have parnasa.
Competitive eating.
No, no, much deeper than that. Not for now. There's a lot of Torah to speak about here. He says, how do you do this? V'yishtekik v'yichsaf ma'oid elav yizbarach b'ratzon muflag b'li shum yidiyah shel yod klal ma hu rotzeh ze b'chinas v'ata noisen lahem esachlam b'itay ze b'chinas ha'aras haratzon anal b'chinas ka'is yeron le'Yaakov ma'pal el. And then he explains as follows. That you need to know. Somebody that wants to gird his loins, means put on his big boy pants. Be a mefarnes. Be somebody that provides. Meaning, provides for himself and for his family and for his children. To be able to provide for those that rely on him. You have to be an ish chayil. You have to be steadfast. You cannot be a shlemazel. How do you do this? How do you have enough money for everything? You have to have a little bit of rulership. Strange. What does that mean? You have to be a Moshe. Ki kol ha-parnasa nimshach me'amalchus. This is in the world of Kabbalah. Parnasa comes from the sphere of Malchus, from the world of Malchus. Va'al kein mi sheroitze lekabel parnasa, somebody that wants parnasa. Tzarich sheyer k'tzas mimshala, has to have a little bit of mimshala, k'dei sheyer lo yezer shaychus Malchus, so that he is connected to that world of Malchus. Ze bechinas leis oich gosh alam, ein alam ela Malchus, which is the Gemara in Tzvachim, ki tzarich sheyer lo mimshala bechinas Malchus leis oich, ki al yedei ze nimshach ha-parnasa anal. And therefore, when a husband puts on his big boy pants and goes out to work to make a parnasa, in order to be there for his wife and for his kids, like you say in the Ksuba, I'm going to take care of you. As they give him, meaning what this gives him is authority. You take ownership over the relationship that you have with your wife. Through taking ownership, from taking radical responsibility, a person then becomes a melech, a shtickle, a moshel a little bit. And the more that a person takes responsibility and ownership over the situation, the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him in a shamayim, the parnasa that you need. Which means that if a person says, I just got a bill for tuition, and it is way more than what I can afford, what is the correct way to deal with this? Is to deal with it. Meaning, not to go to the tuition committee and say, I can't afford. Maybe that might be a part of it. But the point is to say that, Aleph, where is this money going and why am I being charged this? To ask that question. To take responsibility. To say, I'm advocating for the chinuch of my children. Why is this the amount of money that where is the money going? I want to know, how does this help my child? And let's say that is the correct amount of money. That's what it costs. So then, okay, good. I'm taking responsibility for knowing that this is the correct way for my money to be spent in order to ensure that Das Elikim perpetuates from me to my children for the next generation. Mala Arz Das Hashem. Because that's my goal here. My goal isn't to save a buck. My goal isn't to have a nice vacation. My goal is to be mamale the world with Das Elikus. So where's my money going? I'm working very hard. Where's my money going so that the world can be filled with Das Hashem? That's my goal. And to demand answers to those questions. These are essential questions that need to be asked and answered. And schools need to be held responsible for these things. Where's the money going? I want to understand it. Don't tell me you're not privy to these discussions. You're my shlich mitzvah. Since when do you have a shlich mitzvah that doesn't tell you how? I'm paying you to educate my son. And I'm trusting you with this responsibility. I'm trusting you to teach my sons, my daughters to be Mamale Arz Das Hashem. Don't tell me that I'm not allowed to. Of course I should know. You don't need to necessarily disclose how much money everybody's getting. You don't need to tell me private information about that. Tell me, where's my money going? How is this helping my kid? And lo yitzur that is now the amount of money that it costs. So they say, Ribono Shel Olam, I have a situation here. This is how much it costs. This is the best way for me to do the thing that you want me to do. So obviously this tefillah, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, make sure that I can afford for this. And then you say, I'm taking responsibility here. I'm going to do that which I need. If that means I'm going to go speak to the state and get money from the state, because that is money that I'm owed. Or I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation with the guy that owes me money from the last deal that we did so that I can have that. Take the guy to make sure that you get paid appropriately. Say, the money that I'm making now is not enough for me to do this thing, so I now need to go figure out how to take ownership, to take radical responsibility, because the more that a person takes responsibility, the more that min hashamayim they give you. And by the way, this bears out statistically. The stats are that the highest earners in the United States of America today are fathers of small children. Fascinatingly. Out of every age bracket, regardless of sociological background and race, fathers of young children are the highest earners in America.
Well, it's weighted because Elon keeps on having more kids.
Right. Those say you do him lano vesa, she'enem you do him
He has
lano.
600 billion and 13 kids. It's
Right,
weighted
push it,
the wrong
right?
way.
It's,
On average.
somebody said to me one of his kids was named exclamation mark, hashtag something. One of my students said to me, Rabbi, how do you pronounce that name? I said, I think he pronounces it strong password. That's yeah. But the highest earners in America are fathers of young children. Why? Because this is the age bracket. These are the people that take the most responsibility. They take malchus. Meaning, parnasa comes not from hard work. Parnasa does not come from luck. Parnasa comes from the world of Malchus, from taking responsibility. And the more responsibility that you take, the more Parnasa you get. Now, there's other things that can go wrong. There's Averis and Chataim and Avonis and issues that can happen that can block Parnasa. That's true. But the bank account, Min HaShamayim, is open for those that take responsibility. And the more responsibility that you take, not extravagance, but responsibility for Umala Ha'aretz Dasas Hashem. The more responsibility that you take for that, the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you.
So can I ask a question on the responsibility part?
Yes.
So how far can you push that responsibility? Meaning, if it's so important that you ask for it and demand it, and that's the first step. Like, how much can you cry before you say, "I've done enough due diligence"?
So if you have come to the conclusion, you've done the math, you've done the homework, and you know that this is the amount that it costs to do the thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do. So then you say, Rebbe Shalom, I'm taking this on myself to make sure that this happens.
No, I mean, in terms of, is the school spending money on Gashmias or Ruchnias? Like, how far do you take?
So then the responsibility,
that responsibility?
I'm saying then the responsibility of parents is to say, we don't want you to spend money on this. We, the parents, don't want this. This is not something that we want. We don't want you to spend money on this. We want you to spend money on that.
But that's a we conversation. But what's the I conversation?
The I conversation is to take responsibility to galvanize the we. Meaning, the point is that if this is the thing that you care about, as you should appropriately care about, it is to have those conversations, to raise those topics, to say, where is this money coming from and where is it going to? And not to say, I get a bill, I'm subscribing, saving my chinuch. It'll just come out of it. Where did that go? Who ordered this package? The goal is das. And it cannot be that we are creating das in our children by not having das about their education. Meaning the primary issue here is that there is a Yetzer Hara. And I also wanted to be that my children's Rabbeim just raise my kids to be Erlich Talmidei Chachamim and then bring them to me to give me Nachas Zachavrusa. Alavai, that somebody else who did it. And Rav Nachman is saying, yeah, you're welcome to wish for that, but then you're failing as a father. You're failing. You can't expect that to work that way. And for me to give you what you need for that, it's not going to happen. If your goal is to perpetuate Das Elokim in this world, so then you have to take radical responsibility for it. And to ask hard questions and have hard conversations and gather chevra together and say, we don't want this to be the chinuch of our kids, we want this to be the chinuch of our kids. Who says that you, school board, get to determine and to decide how you're going to fulfill the mitzvah that I am empowering you to fulfill on my behalf of my child? I don't want another iPad. I want a better Rebbe. I don't care about the swimming pool. I want my kids to be learning Mishnayos, whatever it might be. Or I do care about a swimming pool. But because this is how I understand the das that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me that I want to perpetuate. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be felt in this world. That when I leave this world, that there is a perpetuation of the things that I know to be good and true, that I'm moving the ball forward in terms of that I'm not having my kids start from where I left off. Meaning from where I started, from where I left off, that's what I want. And you, school, rabbeim, board, principal, head of school, you are charged with this mission. And I'm the person empowering you to do this. You're my shlech mitzvah. And I'm partnering with you in this. And I want to have these hard conversations. And this is what I'm saying is, Rav Nachman is telling you here, it's not an easy solution, but it is the solution, which is to take radical responsibility over the chinuch of your children. and to ask really hard, uncomfortable conversations. Like, to sit down with schools and with Rebbeim and with boards and to secretly they're terrified of this. But the chalashim for it, for parents that are not just mailing it in, but like, if this could be his iris to like a wake up call of like, well, what is the chinuch that you're offering our kids? Don't just tell me to get nachas at a siddur play. How are you ensuring that my kid doesn't become a burnt out sixth grader that doesn't like davening? How are you making sure of that? I want to know, what's the methodology? And how can I partner with you on that? How can you show me how you're doing that so that I can be supportive of it? And then tell me how my dollars are going towards that mission. And if you can't answer those questions, we've got a big problem. If you can't answer how this is getting to that, well then what are we doing? And if the bill is whatever amount it is in order to achieve the goal that we want to achieve, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, good, then I'll write the check for you. If we take responsibility. And part of that responsibility is taking ownership of the process. Own it. Completely. Be the melech, be the Moshe, be the person that says, this is the thing that I need to get done, and this is how I'm going to take care of it. There's no hands off the wheel here. This isn't like, Tesla taking me to Miami while I snooze in the back. This is, I'm taking full responsibility for the chinuch of my child because the goal is umal ha'aretz dasas Hashem. Those are the stakes. It's either this world and my life is meaningful, or this world and my life is insignificant. And what's the price tag that you put on ensuring that your children continue to build off of the meaning that you have created in this world? That price tag, Ribbon Shalom, you give me everything that I need for that. I'm not looking to make it easy. I'm looking to make it hard. I want to know everything. I want to understand everything. I want to know where every dollar is going and why. Tell me what my bill is and why that is the bill. And tell me how this is going to perpetuate and create Yedias Elokus in this world. I'm taking responsibility for that. And if that's the price tag, if that is how much it costs, so then let's take responsibility for making sure that I have that money and that you have that money. Who has to fundraise for it? Us. By working hard, by davening, by petitioning the state, by investing in the right. That hard work is done by Klal Yisrael taking care of it. And more than that, by ensuring that the people that for whatever reason are incapable of coming up with the money for that we take care of them too. We, me, you, each person, as much as they can handle. Because the goal is Yedias Elokus. There's no such thing as somebody saying, I can't do it. If that is how much it costs, and again, that's the if, you have to have the hard conversations. Is that how much it costs? If it is, so then there's no giving up on it. Then that's the correct thing to do. And if that's not, well then, let's have some difficult conversations about where's the money being spent. But all of that is called memshal. And parnasa comes from there. And that is how Yosef HaTzadik becomes the wealthiest man in the world. Because he takes ownership. He says, Paro, you just had dreams. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you. This is how you solve the problem. I'm going to get to work. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you can do that? Excellent. Parnasa goes through you. Because you took responsibility. You took ownership. And the more that we take ownership, the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. So that's the hard answer. It should be in the schus of Nas and schus of Yagan and Val Kodesh that we should be zecher that we and our children's children and deri deris should be zecher not just to fill the world with das elachim, but to continue to be Talmidim for the rest of our lives. Chaim Tov, Shalom.
Amen.
Well,
Didn't say it was going to be easy.